Good morning, my dear students. I welcome you to online English classes. We had already started a new chapter from your book Beehive, that is chapter 7. And the name of the chapter is Packing, written by Jerome K. Jerome. Before we forward to the chapter, we just recall the chapter. This story is about three friends, Jerome, Harris, and George. The author and his friends decided to go on holiday. The author thought he was an expert in packing. He told his friends, George and Harris, that he would do the packing. They at once agreed to his suggestion. George put on a pipe and sat in an easy chair. After then, Harris put his leg on a table and lit a cigar. The author had not intended this. He was unhappy with himself for having offered to pack. He had thought that Harris and George would pack and he would boss over them. When he worked and the people around was relaxed, he was greatly irritated. At the same time, he would not sit still to see others working. He enjoyed getting up and supervising their work. After then, the narrator started packing. It seemed a longer job than he had thought it was going to be. Finally, he finished packing, but Harris told him that he had not packed the boots. Again, he opened the bag and packed the boot. Then, when he was going to close, an idea came to him. He was not sure whether he had packed his toothbrush or not. So, he unpacked the bag and took everything out, but could not find the toothbrush. Then he socked everything one by one. Finally, at last, he found his toothbrush in a boot. Then he repacked once more. The narrator finished packing the bag. George asked if the soap was in, but the narrator was in anger. He won't open the bag again. However, he found that he had packed his tobacco pouch in it. So he had to reopen the bag. George and Harris undertook to do the rest of the packing. Then Harris and George were not good packers. The narrator would see piles of plates, cups, kettles, cakes, tomatoes, etc. Soon the packing became exciting. Cups were broken. Harris packed the strawberry jam on top of the tomato and squeezed it. George walked over the butter. The narrator sat and saw them packing. This irritated George and Harris. They stepped on things, then they didn't find what they wanted to find. They packed and pies at the bottom. They squeezed them after putting heavy thing on them. George and Harris upset everything. George trod on the butter. While packing, George got the butter off his slipper. Then they tried to put it in the kettle. It won't go, and what was in wouldn't come out. Then at last they put it down on a chair. Harris sat on it, it stuck to him. Then they went looking for it over the room. Now we start the rest chapter. Montmorency was in it all, of course. Montmorency's ambitions in life to get in the way and be thrown at. If you ask him in anywhere where he particularly is not wanted to be a perfect nuisance and make people mad and have things thrown at his head, then he feels this day has not been wasted. Now, what's the meaning of thrown at? That means get scalded. Squirm, that means to wrinkle or twist one's body. Nuisance, that means to cause inconvenience or annoyance. Now here, the narrator introduced Jerome's pet dog. His narrator pet dog, that is Montmorency. Montmorency participated in all this. His aim was to interrupt everyone and then got scolded for it. Jerome added that if Montmorency was able to twist into a place and create nuisance by angrily people and get things thrown at him in return, he felt that he had utilized the day in a good way. To get somebody to struggle over him and curse him steadily for an hour in his highest aim and object, and when he was succeed in accomplishing this, his conceit became quite unbearable. Stumble, that means to trip over a hurdle. Curse, that means scold. Conceit, that means here his pride in himself. Now Montmorency's aim was to get people stripped over, and for that he scolded. By doing this, he felt that he had fulfilled his aim and would feel proud of his achievement. He came and sat down on things just when they were wanted to be packed, and he labored under the fixed belief that whenever Harris or George reached out their hand for anything, it was his cold, damp nose that they wanted. They put his leg into the jam and he worried the teaspoons, and he pretended that the lemons were rats and not into the hamper and killed 3 of them before Harris could land him with the frying pan. Now worried means disturbed. Pretendent, that means to behave as if something is true when you know that it is not. Land him, that means hit or punch someone. Now the Montmorency set on the things to be packed and spoiled everything. He thought that when George and Harris reached out for the things to be packed, they were reaching out for his cold, wet nose. and would bring in for them. He stepped into the jam's bottle. He soaked the teaspoons. He acted as if the lemons were rat and stepped into the hamper to kill this rat. He was stopped by Harris, who hit him with a frying pan. Harris said, I encouraged him. I didn't encourage him. A dog like that doesn't want any encouragement. It's the natural original sim that is born in him that make him do things like that. Now here Harris blamed Jerome for encouraging Montmorency for doing all the mischief. Jerome says that a dog like Montmorency didn't need encouragement. It was born to be like that and act like that. The packing was done at 12:50 and Harry sat on the big hamper and said he hoped nothing would be found broken. George says that if anything was broken, it was broken, which reflection seems to be comfort him. He also said he was ready for bed. We were all ready for bed. Harris was to sleep with us that night. We went upstairs. Reflection, that means thought. Finally, at 10:50, they had packed the hampers. Harris sat on it and said that hopefully nothing would break in it. George was indifferent and said that if something broke, it would not matter. As they were ready for bed, they went upstairs to sleep. We tossed for bed and Harry said to sleep with me. He said, do you prefer the inside or the outside? George, I said I generally prefer to sleep inside a bed. Harry said it was odd. George said, what time shall I woke you fellows? Harry said 7. I said no, 6, because I wanted to write some letters. Harris and I had a bit of row over it, but at last split the difference and said last 6:30. Wake up at 6:30, George, we said. Tossed means throw something or somewhere lightly or casually. As they settled in their bed, Harris asked Jerome if he preferred the inside or the outside of the bed. Jerome says that he preferred to sleep on the inside of the bed. For that also they are fighting. This seems strange to Harris. George asked them what he should wake them up at what time. That time Harris replied 7, while Jerome wanted to wake up at 6 and he had write some letters. What's the meaning of a bit of a row? That means an argument. Split the difference, that means this means that they agreed on 6:30 because it was half past between 6 and 7. Now here Harris and Jerome had a decision on the time and finally they settled on 6:30. His time by half an hour. George made no answer and we found on going over that he had been asleep for some time. So we placed the bath where he could tumble into on getting in the morning and went to the bed ourselves. Tumble, that means to fall quickly without control. George didn't respond as he was asleep. Harris and George made mischief by placing the bathtub next to George's bed so that he could fall into out as he woke up on the pretext that this way he would take a bath as soon as he get up. Now this chapter is finally completed. But what's the theme of the chapter? In the chapter, Jerome tells us that before starting any journey, we should plan and prepare for it well. Otherwise, we have to face a lot of difficulties. We should not take any task very easy or leave it on other. Our life is also a journey, and we met with complex situation many times while continuing our journey. But if we have deal with them, we do not have to experience too much pains. Through this story, the author tells us that the thing that seems to be very easy may not be as easy as we think. Packing thing is a bag is not difficult task, but it made a mess because it was not done with a proper plan. And what's the message? The story gives us clear message that we must have proper knowledge of packing. In the absence of knowledge, we are bound to face problem as suffered by three friends, Jerome, George and Harris. We also learn that while packing, we must avoid the final stage of packing for some time. For quick decision may create problem for our happy journey. And what's the conclusion of the title? Here the story revolves around the incident of packing. During the course of packing, the three friends commit several silly mistakes. They have to reopen the bag and put things in it. It seems that packing is an art. If it is not done properly, the packer has to face countless problems. So, in this way, we complete this chapter. Hope you all understood this chapter. Thank you.